It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you are tuning in. Oh, man. Big day today. Gus Bradley got fired as of yesterday, which is the least surprising thing ever. Okay, this was something that was going to happen whether or not Chris Ballard got fired, whether or not Shane Steichen got fired. There was absolutely no possible way that the Colts were going to allow Gus Bradley to come back as their defensive coordinator next year. And, you know, look, he's the scapegoat in all of this. He just is, okay? Everyone knew that this is what was going to happen. And, look, this undoubtedly should happen. He has been horrendously bad every single year that he has been the Colts defensive coordinator. Now, let's just look at this year, because this year it was awful. Okay, I highlighted some of this yesterday, but the Colts consistently had one of the worst defenses in the NFL under Gus Bradley. This year they were 29th in yards allowed. Zaire Franklin, do you know why you led the NFL in tackles? It's because you were on the field more than any other linebacker in the NFL, because you were just so bad defensively that you couldn't get off the field. The Colts were 26th in points allowed. Okay, they were 19th in red zone touchdowns allowed. They were 31st in third down defense. Look, if you want to figure out who the best defenses in the NFL are, I truly believe that there are only two stats that you need to look at. How good are they on third down? Do they get off the field? And do they give up touchdowns in the red zone? Colts were a little below average in the giving up touchdowns in the red zone department, but they were just so awful on third down, and it's just because of this. We're going to rush forward. We're going to drop everybody else, even though our linebackers don't cover very well, and our defensive backs are young, and they don't cover very well either, with the exception of Jalen Jones. Okay, like it was just a really bad year from this Colts defense. Just whenever I think about how bad this Colts defense is, I just remember the fact that they gave up 45 points to Drew Lock, and it makes me laugh because there's not a defense in the NFL that should give up 45 points to the Drew Lock-led Giants. But the one thing that the Colts did well this year was the turnovers. Okay, they were 8th in the NFL this year in takeaways, which is great, but that is not a consistent thing. Turnovers in the NFL, a lot of it's luck-based, okay? It's a running back running through the hole, and the defensive end, instead of grabbing their shoulder, they grab the football instead, and then it's a fumble, and then the ball kicks to your teammate, thankfully, and then you jump on it. Or these quarterbacks are so incredibly good that interceptions happen off of mistakes, not defenses forcing them. So, you know, if Gus Bradley wanted to be like, we forced a bunch of turnovers, it's not because of you, buddy. It's not because of you. Once again, this Colts defense was bad. So our guy, Gus Bradley, had to go. No way around it. And look, someone had to go. It definitely wasn't going to be Shane Steichen. Okay. And, you know, they opted to get rid of Gus Bradley over Chris Ballard. Okay. And I know Colts fans want a lot more change than just this. I believe I saw a comment before my stream started by Lick saying 1 down, 2 to go, or 3 to go, or something like that. And which I somewhat agree with. I still am holding out some hope for Shane Steichen. But anyway, I know the Colts fans want a lot more change than just this, but at least this is a step in the proper direction. Okay. Now, in terms of who the Colts go get, if it's Robert Saleh, I'm going to be over the moon. That would be the absolute, undoubtedly the best hire that the Colts could make for their defensive coordinator. You know, just go look at the Jets defense. Their numbers before Robert Saleh left versus after, they are night and day. They went from being one of the best defenses in the NFL to being one of the worst defenses in the NFL after Robert Saleh left. He would be the best hire, which means that the Colts will not hire him. Okay. So if it's not him, I don't really care who it is, as long as it's not Matt Eberflus. Okay. Here's what I want. in terms of the next defensive coordinator for the Colts. I just want someone who will put together a multiple defense. Okay? I want a flexible defense, not this rigid, we're going to stay in cover 3 until we give up 1 million points defense that we had under Gus Bradley. Okay? Because here's the reality for this Colts defense. Talent-wise, they are lacking. Okay? They are. There's some solid defensive linemen. The linebackers are fine. The defensive backs are young, and they were good enough, I guess. Actually, no. They weren't good enough. They gave up 45 to the Giants. What am I talking about? And, like, the Colts just aren't going to have the players on defense to be able to get stops based off of their talent. Like, for the Steelers, like they can run out there. They can run whatever system, whatever kind of defense they want to run because they are just so uber talented on that side of the football. The Colts are not that. The Colts, in terms of talent on defense, they are much more similar to the Minnesota Vikings this year. Like, when you look at the Vikings defense, there's not a bunch of big names, okay, unless you watch the Vikings a lot. Like, you're going to be a little short coming up with the names of guys on that defense, but they were excellent. Like, they're going to have guys who are probably going to be all-pro in Danielle Hunter and Andrew Van Ginkel, okay? And the reason why is because of their defensive coordinator. Brian Flores came in, and he just throws everything at you. Everything. And that is why that Vikings defense was so good. It was so polar opposite to what the Colts did, where it's just like, look, we're going to run cover 3 the entire game. We may blitz a 5th guy every now and then, but for the most part, this is what we're going to do. And then you watch the Vikings play, and it's, we're going to blitz 3 on this down, and we're going to drop 8. And then we're going to blitz 6. And then we're only going to bring 4. And then we're going to bring 5. And this time we're going to put 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, and we're going to drop 4 of them, but you don't know which 4 we're going to draw. We're going to drop. It's fun to watch. Like, I love watching the Vikings play defense because of that. The Colts, because of the lack of talent that they have on the defensive side of the football, they need an innovator. They need someone who is flexible, willing to mix coverages, willing to play a little bit of man and then a little bit of zone. And then, like, they just need someone who's going to mix it up, not someone like Gus Bradley who wants to sit and cover 3 all game and get picked apart, right? And the defense that Gus Bradley ran, pretty eerily similar to the Legion of Boom. But here's the thing. When you have Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and a bunch of the best players in the NFL on your defense, then you can just sit and cover 3 and just let them be amazing. But when you have a talent deficit like the Colts do on defense, you have to have someone who is innovative. All right, that is what I want from this next Colts defensive coordinator. Someone who will mix it up, is multiple, and, isn't afraid to blitz from time to time. Okay, Zach Hicks is going to join me at 11 o'clock, and we're going to talk a little bit more about who the Colts should go get as their defensive coordinator. I got to be honest. If I was someone looking to become a defensive coordinator, I would jump at this job. I would. Because you never want to be the guy after the guy, right? Like you want to follow someone who's terrible. Like, O.J. Mayo got fired in New England, I think, in part because he had to follow Bill Belichick. Right. And look, you're always going to get compared to the guy that came before you. Right. And look, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I would like to be compared to Gus Bradley, a guy who had, an awful defense 3 years in a row here in Indianapolis. Like, if the next guy shows up and he's average, I mean, people are going to be going crazy for that dude. Okay. So, defensive coordinators out there, you want this job. I'm just telling you. The other reason why I think a defensive coordinator should want this job is because this Colts team just isn't going to be very good next year, and I just don't think people are really going to care all that much. When I moved here, 4 years ago now, something crazy like that, the Pacers were awful. It was the 2021 to 2022 season. They were not very good. They went 25-57. Okay, but that was kind of the start of the year, or the start when things started to look up. They made the trade for Tyrese Halliburton. They moved Domantas Sabonis. They really opened things up. That's kind of where things started to get better, and things have been dandy ever since. Also, Pacers are now 9-3 in their last 12 games. And I remember moving to town, not knowing anybody, sitting in my apartment, probably 10 to 15 minutes away from Gamebridge, and being like, what do I want to do tonight? And then I'd pull up my phone, scroll through, StubHub or wherever I was buying tickets. And I'd be like, oh, I can pay like $20, sit in the nosebleeds and watch a game. I'm gonna go do that. And I did that several times throughout my first year here in Indianapolis. And I had a blast going to those games because I got to see Steph Curry tie Reggie Miller's 3-point record. I saw one of the very few games where James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant all played together for the Nets. Kevin Durant went for 40 in that game. It was awesome. There was a fight that almost happened 3 seats behind me. It was crazy. It was great. I will never forget that fight almost happening. It was this crazy old gentleman, because that was the year that Kyrie Irving was doing the whole vaccine thing. So he was only playing road games. He wasn't playing at home and all that kind of stuff. And I'll never forget, there was this older gentleman. Gentleman's a really nice way to describe him. He's standing up behind me. He's got his grandkids with him. And he's like, he keeps yelling like, I support you, Kyrie, and blah, 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 blah. And then like 4 seats to my left, there was a guy probably about my age who turned around and he was like, will you please shut, the F up? And then, they started yelling at each other. And I was like, these guys are about to fight. Anyway, I will never forget that. And I will never forget going to those Pacers games. Like, I had an absolute blast, not because the Pacers were good, but because the teams that I went to see them play were good. Okay? And that is what I think Colts games are going to be like next year. People will not be buying tickets to watch the Colts play. They will be buying tickets to watch whoever the Colts are playing play. Okay? Now, obviously, the Colts have their 3 division opponents at home next year. But then, they have some, legitimately entertaining guys that are coming in and are going to play. They're going to play the Dolphins at home again. I mean, I'll go watch Jalen Waddle and Tua. That sounds like a good time. They're going to play the Cardinals. That sounds good, right? So they got the Cardinals and the Falcons and the Raiders and the 49ers. And, I would partially pay to watch the Dolphins because I'm a fan. The average Colts fan probably wouldn't. But the Titans, who are obviously going to be coming in, they have the number 1 overall pick. I would totally pay money to watch Travis Hunter play live in person, if that's who they take, or Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, whoever they decide to go with there. When the Cardinals come to town, I would pay money to watch Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. in person. I would pay to watch Michael Penix Jr. and Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson when the Atlanta Falcons come to town. And I'm sure that there are plenty of Indiana fans who would also pay money to watch Michael Penix Jr. play in Indianapolis. Okay, the Raiders, they're probably going to draft a quarterback. If they draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, I would love to go to Lucas Oil and watch those young quarterbacks play. Okay, I definitely pay to watch the 49ers. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. That is how Colts fans, football fans in Indianapolis are going to approach going to Colts games next year, especially early in the season when hope is at an all-time low. Okay, because that's the reality of it. Hope will be at an all-time low. There's zero faith in Anthony Richardson. There's zero faith in Shane Steichen. There's zero faith in Chris Ballard. Stuff coming up on him here in about 5 minutes. But seriously, that is why people will go to Colts games next year. It won't be to watch the Colts. It'll be to watch whoever they're playing against. Now, obviously, they start 5-0. If Anthony Richardson looks like a legitimate franchise quarterback, that will change quickly. Okay, but I can tell you right now, I'm not going to a game for the Indianapolis Colts unless the other team is good, unless the other team has a player that I'm just incredibly intrigued by. And that's where I'm at with the Colts next season. Okay, I think tickets are going to be cheap, and I think the stands are going to be empty for a lot of the year. Got a really good show lined up for you today. Once again, Zach Hicks is going to come on at good old 2 p.m. 2 p.m. I just got a text. Sorry. Zach Hicks is going to come on at 11, as he always does. That's coming up here in about 45 minutes. I'm going to introduce something that you can play along with me tomorrow. We're going to do a little Chris Ballard bingo. Actually going to do that coming up here in like 5 minutes. It's Tuesday, so we have a Top 10 Tuesday, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs that are quickly approaching as well. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, we're going to get into Chris Ballard bingo.
The best takes. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps, or maybe you're listening just via 1430 AM in your car. Now, tomorrow morning, we get the thing that we all knew was going to happen. We get the Chris Ballard end of the year press conference. It starts at 9 a.m. Don't know what time it'll be over, but I can't wait. I can't wait for this press conference because, this is year 8. Another failure, another year of not winning the division, 5 straight years now of not making the playoffs, now one of the longer droughts in the NFL. Like, the NFL is built for parity, okay? Like, they make the schedules tougher for teams that win divisions. They make them easier for teams that finish lower in divisions. It is designed for parity, and the Colts have been incapable of taking advantage of that parity during the Chris Ballard era. And look, I've heard enough Chris Ballard press conferences to know what we're going to hear tomorrow. So I wish there was a way that I could share this. But last night, I had some time, There weren't any super great games on. I watched the Pacers beat the Nets. Another good game from Halliburton, by the way. Mathurin with 20. He looks good. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put together Chris Ballard Bingo. So I've got a little 5x5 note card here in my notes. I just created it with a chart. And so I've basically got all of these things that I expect for Chris Ballard to say. I've got 24 with the free space being in the middle. And so I'm going to run through it. And, if you're watching on YouTube, first off, you should be watching on YouTube. Head over there, Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe, join the live stream. So that way you can comment and chat and do all of those things. And I've put together this bingo card of everything that I think Chris Ballard is going to say. And I think I might get bingo twice. I really, really do. So we'll start in my top left corner and we'll work our way across. And then, we'll go down from there. So top left, the one thing that that he's going to say, undoubtedly, he says it every year, is we're so close. That will be one of the first things that he says. Because, the first question is going to be, hey, man, you've been here for 8 years. You haven't won jack squat. What's up? And he's going to be like, man, we are so close. So that one feels so incredibly easy. The next space over, he's going to say something about firing himself. Because that's just like such a cliche thing. But, guys, I'm disappointed too. I just, I really am. I've fired myself like 4 times already. Okay. He's going to say something like that towards the end when he's making like his closing statement. I expect for him to say something like, I know I'm the guy for this job, even though the last 8 years have completely and fully proven that he is not the guy for this job. My 4th space at the top is he's going to say something like, we're going to rebuild through the draft. That's just what we believe. And then shortly after that, he'll say what's in my next space over, where he talks about how free agency is overrated. Everyone wants us to make a splash in free agency, but free agency is overrated. It's not where all the good players are. He'll say something like that as well. And then moving down to my second row, we're going to get something about how he hated letting Gus Bradley go. Gus is a good guy. He is, but we had to let him go. I didn't give him enough good players. That's on me. We're going to get something like that. The next space over, I've got him. He's going to say that he's disappointed. I probably should put like 3 times in there just to make that one somewhat difficult to be achieved, but he's going to say that he's disappointed. I got a comment on YouTube from Ridger saying, we like our guys. That's our next space over. He's like, we like our guys. I don't know why you like your guys. You can't go better than 9-8 with them, but hey, whatever you say. And then the next spot is he's going to mention something about Shane Steichen being the right coach for the job. Shane Steichen is the right coach to develop Anthony Richardson. And I have full faith in Shane Steichen's ability to do that. And then my next space is awkward laugh. He's going to say something serious and then awkwardly laugh to let everyone know that he's just a fun guy. So, yeah. Next row, this is row number 3, the middle row. He will be asked about Zaire Franklin. There is not a doubt in my mind that someone is going to ask him about Zaire Franklin and his antics and his podcast and all of those things. And he's like, Zaire Franklin's a real leader. Zaire Franklin is a leader, and he's one of our better voices in that locker room. Maybe that's why you're 9-8 or 8-9 this year. It's because Zaire Franklin is one of the premier voices talking to your players. Next space over. Someone I am assuming is going to ask him about Pat McAfee, and he's going to do something like, I like Pat McAfee. I like all of our former players. They're welcome in the building anytime they want, and Pat McAfee is entitled to his opinion. And that'll kind of be it. And then I've got a free space. And then the next spot over, he's going to say something about needing to be better. I expect it to come when he's talking about Gus Bradley and letting him go. He's like, I hate that we had to let Gus Bradley go, but that's on me. I need to be better. I need to get him better players. Chris, you can do that in free agency. Okay. I expect him to say something about not cutting his hair until he wins a Super Bowl. That is going to be said as well at some point because Chris Ballard just likes to make things about himself. So there's not a doubt in my mind that he's going to bring up not cutting his hair until he wins a Super Bowl because people around here might eat that up. I don't know if people will eat it up anymore like they did before the season started, but wouldn't surprise me if he did. Next slide or next spot down. So this is the fourth row, first column. He's going to make a cliche statement about belief. Earlier in the year, I guess it was before the year started, he said, either you believe in something or you stand for nothing, something like that. It was straight out of Hamilton. I don't know if you're a Hamilton fan. Big show tunes guy I am. I won't lie to you. If you haven't seen Tick, Tick, Boom, it's on Netflix. It's really good. Anyway, he's going to make some cliche statement about belief. Okay, and how he believes in what they're doing and all of that awesome stuff. Okay, we're also going to get some statement about how we like what we saw from Latu. Latu, he didn't have the sacks, he didn't have the production that we wanted, but like if you go back and you watch the tape, we really liked what we saw from Latu. He's going to say something about that. Okay, we're going to get him giving us some spiel on how A.D. Mitchell's a good kid. He's just young. That's all. He didn't perform the way that he wanted to or the way that we wanted to, but hey, he's a good kid. Okay, he's going to say something like that. My Chris Ballard impression just keeps getting worse the more that I do it, so I apologize. We're also going to get a statement from Chris Ballard on how Anthony Richardson's gotten better. Anthony, he only completed 48% of his passes. He threw for less than 200 yards per game on average, but he got better. Did you all see that Jets game? The one good game that he played all year? Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that throw he made in week 1 against Houston? That's what we envisioned. We envisioned him getting pressured almost immediately and then slipping because there's a defensive end in his face and then just chucking it as far as he can. That's what they envisioned when they drafted Anthony Richardson. As he's talking about A.D. Mitchell and Leatu Latu and Anthony Richardson as he's growing, we're going to hear something about someone being a horseshoe guy, right? Maybe it's Zaire Franklin. Maybe he's going to do the whole, Zaire Franklin's a leader. He's a horseshoe guy. I guess being a horseshoe guy means that you do a podcast and you just do a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter and you don't win anything. That's probably what a horseshoe guy is. I also think that he's going to say something about Joe Flacco being a great mentor for Anthony Richardson, even though every time they cut to the sideline during games, Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson are like never talking to each other. It's always Sam Ehlinger talking to Anthony Richardson. I mean, geez. We're going to get something about that. We're going to get some sort of comments on Ryan Kelly, and it's going to say something along the lines of, Ryan Kelly's a great guy. Hopefully, we can re-sign him and get him back, even though that's not going to happen because I'd just be really surprised if the Colts re-signed Ryan Kelly because Chris Ballard extends guys before they leave. Like, that's just kind of what he does, and that's a pretty normal practice across the NFL. So we're going to get something about how Ryan Kelly's a great dude, and hopefully we can re-sign him. And sadly, things just didn't line up with the extension, but the Colts are working hard to bring back the 10-year veteran, even though I highly doubt that Chris Ballard wants Ryan Kelly back because Ryan Kelly's a Grigson guy. So I'd be very, very surprised if Chris Ballard brings back Ryan Kelly, but he will sell it like he wants him back. Ryan Kelly, great guy. Hopefully we can re-sign him. That is on the bottom row, second column of my Chris Ballard bingo board. It's just really common now for everyone associated with the Colts to mention Michael Pittman Jr. being tough. So I fully expect for us to get some sort of quote from Chris Ballard saying that, Michael Pittman Jr., he's as tough as they come. I mean, we're going to get something like that. Did you know that he had a fractured back and he played anyway? Here's my thing. If Michael Pittman Jr. can play with a fractured back, then why couldn't Anthony Richardson play? I think that's a very fair question to ask. We're also going to get him patting himself on the back. All right. We're going to hear him say something like, Jonathan Taylor was great this season. That's why I paid him. So that's why I paid a whole bunch of money to a position that is not a premier position. Okay. So, we're going to get some sort of comment on Jonathan Taylor and how smart it was of Chris Ballard to pay him. And then finally, the last slot that we're going to get, the last quote we will undoubtedly get from Chris Ballard is, I don't blame you for being upset. I'm pretty upset too. Right? That's what he's going to say. He said, I don't blame you for being upset. I don't blame you, the fans, for being disappointed. I know I failed 8 years in a row. So I don't blame you for being upset, but, I mean, yeah, those are all of the quotes that we are going to get from Chris Ballard. I think there's a pretty solid chance that every quote that I just gave you, we will get from Chris Ballard at some point tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when he does his end of the year press conference. I mean, the guy is he's very predictable, okay? Which he should be. He's been here for 9 years. I'm sure Patriots fans in New England knew what Bill Belichick was going to say in every single one of his press conferences before, he was eventually fired and all of that good stuff. Also, I do want to touch on this. I mentioned earlier about how Michael Pittman Jr. played through a fractured back, which is a big deal. Okay. Look, that Michael Pittman Jr. is tough. Like, I know I was making fun of it a few minutes ago, but he legitimately is. Someone else came out and said that Julian Blackmon played through a torn labrum. Look, my right labrum is currently fully torn, and my left labrum is currently partially torn. They've been like this for 5 years now. Okay, having a torn labrum is not a big deal as a free safety. It's just not. Okay, like when you tear your labrums, you can't throw anything. Like, I can lightly toss a baseball 90 feet. I can lightly toss a football probably like 80 feet, right? But if I do anything more than that, my shoulders flare up. It's not good. It hurts like crazy. I can't really bench press in the gym. And so, like, it affects you a little bit. But with, like, playing free safety, like, your shoulder probably hurts whenever you hit somebody. But I would imagine that your shoulder hurts when you hit another grown man, whether your labrum's torn or not. So I don't really think that Julian Blackmon having a torn labrum is an excuse for how poorly he played this year. Okay, coming off of a training camp where he was apparently the best player ever. So there you go. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, we will take a little break from the Colts conversation. The NFL playoffs are quickly approaching. It's Tuesday, so it's Top 10 Tuesday. I'm going to rank the 10 best teams heading into the playoffs. I've also got a little line in there. You'll see what that is here at some point when we come back. Zach Hicks, he's joining me here in about 25 minutes. We're going to continue to talk Colts. I'm assuming we'll talk a lot about the defensive coordinator, kind of who some of the guys are out there. I know that Zach Hicks has looked into that. I personally have not, but, I think I'm pretty clear on that. I just want someone who's multiple and is going to mix it up because the Colts don't have the dudes to just commit to playing one system. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, Top 10 Tuesday in 25 minutes, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Hopefully the start to your new year has been good. It was not a good start to the new year for our guy, Gus Ballard. He got canned yesterday. Colts starting that search for a new defensive coordinator. Don't care who it is. I just want somebody who is innovative, someone who will mix things up, someone who isn't committed to just one system. That is really my only request for the job search. It is Tuesday, Top 10 Tuesday, and, it's time to do the 10 best teams in the playoffs because it is time for the NFL playoffs, and I just love this time of year. We're about to go on this amazing run. Thursday night, we got Notre Dame, Penn State. It's going to be great. It's the Overachievers Bowl. Excuse me, the Underachievers Bowl. That's mean. Notre Dame is actually good this year. I know I made some people upset with what I said after they beat Georgia. But Notre Dame is good. I can tell you right now, I am going to take them to win that game. But we have that game on Thursday. Friday night, we got Texas, Ohio State. Saturday, we got Steelers and Texans. And then we've got, the nightcap, I believe we've got Chargers and Texans at 4:30. And then the nightcap, we got Steelers, Ravens. That game's going to be awesome. And then even more playoff games on Sunday. And then the Monday night game should be the Rams and the Vikings. I'm on my couch. I'm eating good food. Actually, not really. I'm in the middle of this Daniel fast. So I'll be eating above average food, and it's going to be great. I can't wait. So let's get into Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams heading into the NFL playoffs. At number 10, I have the Commanders. And look, I think this was the hardest spot to figure out who I was going to put in. Here are the teams that I left off. And really, the difference for me was offense. Like the Commanders score the football better than the Texans do because the Texans have a lot of injuries at wide receiver. I've got the Commanders in front of the Buccaneers for the same reason. I also trust the Commanders' defense a little bit more than the Buccaneers. The Steelers can't score at all anymore. Like teams are like, oh, so you're just going to throw the ball deep? Okay, we can cover that pretty easily. And so Steelers don't really scare me. The Broncos, great story. Sean Payton, really good head coach, good defense, but I want teams that can consistently score the football because if you can do that and force a turnover or two, then you have a great chance to win the game. So I'm gonna roll with the Commanders at 10, but if you wanted to sub in the Broncos, I don't think I'd be very upset by that. Number 9, I have the Chargers because the Chargers are the Chargers. They have a great quarterback. The numbers that Justin Herbert has put up this year do not fully tell the story of how good of a year he has had. He's not turning the ball over. They're running the football well. They have a good offensive line. Jim Harbaugh is a good head coach, a guy who's, coached in the Super Bowl before. Like that guy, he can really coach. They have a really good defense, one of the 10 best in the NFL. I don't like their weapons. That's why I don't have them higher. I just think it's hard to win games when Ladd McConkey is your best wide receiver. Number 8, a team that I really wanted to rank higher, but just couldn't because it's the playoffs and there's a lot of teams in this that are really good at football. And yeah, it was just really hard to come back and put this team higher just because I think the teams in front of them are better. Number 8, I have the Packers. Christian Watson going out for the rest of the playoffs is terrible for them. He was one of their better receivers. With that being said, they have a ton of depth at wide receiver, so they'll be okay without him. Still love their defense. Might be a little too turnover dependent, but still like them. A lot of good players on the back end. The reason, though, why I have them at 8 and I don't have them higher is because Jordan Love is just a little too up and down for me. Okay? Like, first 8 games of the year, he wasn't very good. Last 9, he was awesome. Gets hurt against the Bears. With an elbow thing, he should still play in that first round game against the Eagles. If they beat the Eagles, I wouldn't be surprised because they are very talented and the best version of Jordan Love is better than Jalen Hurts. And whenever you have the better coach, which the Packers do, and the better quarterback, which the Packers might, then you have an excellent chance to win that game. Jordan Love, just a little too up and down for me, so I've got them at number 8. Number 7, I have the Los Angeles Rams. It's Matthew Stafford. It's Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp with an excellent running back in Kyron Williams. Sean McVay, one of the best coaches in the NFL. You can make an argument that he's the best coach in the NFL. It's a very young defense that's improved throughout the course of the season. They have an excellent coach. They started the year 1-4, finished 9-3 with some impressive wins. They're really good. They could have been 11-6, but they rested all their guys week 18. That's how good they feel about their roster. They're like, you know what? We'll be the 4 seed. We'll play host to either the Vikings or the Lions. We don't think it's going to matter. We think we're better than everybody when we're healthy, so we're going to prioritize being healthy. They also have Matthew Stafford, who's the best quarterback in that conference, so they're going to have an excellent chance to beat whoever, or the Vikings, and whoever else they wind up playing. Number 6, I have the Vikings. Sam Darnold. Very similar to kind of the Jordan Love thing, where the best version of Sam Darnold's awesome, as we've seen, right? Like the Vikings went 14-3 with him. Like, come on now. And when he's at his best, he can beat anyone. Or, excuse me, the Vikings can beat anyone. But when he plays like he did on Sunday Night Football against the Lions, they aren't going to beat anybody because he just simply wasn't very good. 18-41 is not going to get it done at any level. Okay, this defense lacks talent, but they tend to kind of find a way. So I don't really want to put a bunch of my chips in that basket of this Vikings defense is going to get things done because I don't trust the talent, even though they have been really good this year. Once we cross over into the top 5 teams, these are the 5 teams that I think can win the Super Bowl. Everyone else below, 6 and down, good team, could make a run to the Super Bowl, could, make a run to the conference championships, all that stuff. But I don't think any of those 5 teams are good enough to win the whole thing. But these bottom 5, or top 5, I guess, undoubtedly can. Number 5, I have the Detroit Lions. They have the best offense in the playoffs. They're going to score no matter who they play against. And because of that, they're going to have an opportunity to win. They have an amazing culture. You could argue it's the best of any team in the NFL. Just the way that they get those guys to play hard every single week, the way that Dan Campbell commands the room and gets guys to buy in and play just a little bit harder and do all of those things, I think it'd be hard to argue that they don't have the best culture in the NFL. The reason why I have them 5th, though, is because of all the injuries on defense. They didn't seem to matter Sunday night against the Vikings, but I have a hard time believing that they won't matter against teams like the Eagles. And if they get to the Super Bowl, I just have a hard time believing that those injuries won't matter against the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens. Speaking of the Ravens, they are who I have 4th. I wouldn't vote Lamar Jackson for MVP, but if he won it, I wouldn't be upset. Okay, they have the 2nd best offense in the playoffs behind the Lions. They defend the run better than anyone else in the NFL. They run the football better than anyone else in the NFL. But pass defense is bad. It's the 2nd worst in the NFL. And I am someone who is all about running the football. I think that the best offenses in the NFL can run the ball. That's why the Lions and the Ravens are better than everybody else. But this is ultimately a passing league. If you can't throw the football, and if you can't, limit other teams in throwing the football, then you're probably going to lose. And this Ravens secondary has struggled mightily this year. Lamar Jackson has a history of not playing well in the playoffs. And that has to matter because it's not like it's his 3rd year in the league. Like, he's been around a pretty decent amount of time here. So, yeah, history is kind of keeping me off the Ravens. But look, if they won the whole thing, I wouldn't be surprised because they're a really good football team. Number 3, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles. Injuries coming into play. They have the best roster of any team in the playoffs. Okay? Vic Fangio has turned that defense around. Guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell have both been amazing on the back end as rookies, 2 guys that the Colts could have drafted but opted not to. The linebackers have been solid. They've got a front that really gets after the quarterback and controls the line of scrimmage. Offensively, they've got the 2nd best offensive line in the NFL behind the Lions. If you wanted to tell me it was the best, I would say okay. They have an excellent running back in Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts has played really good football this year. They have an excellent collection of receivers like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. It's hard to get much better than that in terms of your top two wide receivers. This roster's loaded. I don't trust Nick Sirianni in the slightest. That's why I've got him at 3 and I don't have them at 2. So that's kind of my holdup. But Eagles, man, they're the best team in the NFC right now. No question about it. Number 2, I have the Buffalo Bills. Okay. They have the Bills do, the player that I would hand out the MVP award to. Josh Allen has been nothing short of incredible this year. The Bills are top 5 in the history of the NFL in points per drive at a little over 3, which is absurd. That is an absurd number. That means every time that the Bills possess the football, they average a field goal. Okay? That is top 5 all time. That's just incredible. And a large part of that is because of Josh Allen and the fact that he has avoided turning the football over this year, and he's running like crazy, and he's throwing the football all over the place, and he's staying healthy. He's staying on the field. Like, he has been nothing short of spectacular this year. Okay? And you pair that with this defense and a head coach in McDermott, who is more of a defensive guy. Matt Milano's back. He's their best defender, right? He missed a lot of the season, right, with a torn bicep, which sounds terrible. So their best defender's back. They have a quarterback playing better than anyone else in the NFL right now. They're much more balanced on offense than what they used to be. James Cook is a really good running back. The offensive line is blocking well. They brought in Amari Cooper. Keon Coleman's gotten better throughout the season. Khalil Shakir has gotten better. I think it's his second or third year in the league. He's gotten a lot better. Like, they have weapons on the outside. They have a really good running back. They block well. They're solid on defense. They've got some guys who can rush the passer. Really like the Bills. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have Josh Allen, a guy who has consistently played well in the playoffs. He just can't seem to play a little bit better than Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs, who I have at number 1. They went 15-2, and they sat their starters in Week 18. I mean, they went 15-1 in the games where they actually made an attempt to win. Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL because Patrick Mahomes just figures out a way to win every single game that he's in, and that is ultimately the goal. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're just loaded defensively. They're 4th in points allowed per game. They're 12th in yards per play, 8th in red zone defense. And that combined with the best quarterback in the NFL and arguably the best coach in the NFL, you're just going to have a great chance to beat everybody that you play. You and I both know that Travis Kelce is going to show up when he absolutely needs to. Okay, that they did go out and bring in DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who is more than capable of making big plays. So I think they're a little more explosive on offense than we realize. I think they've done a really good job of incorporating Xavier Worthy into the offense and, allowing him to use his speed to stretch the defense. Isaiah Pacheco is back. He missed a lot of time with an injury, so he's going to be fresher than he would normally be heading into the playoffs. The one concern is the offensive line, but I just kind of expect for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to figure it out because I've seen them figure it out consistently for the past 8 years. Right? They've made the AFC title game like 8 years in a row. It's unprecedented what we have seen the Chiefs do. Right? And a lot of it is because of who their head coach is, and more importantly, who their quarterback is, combined with this outstanding defense. Okay, a defense that consistently gets stops. And, they're really good. And they've been playing better and better as of late. They've really struggled with turnover luck, but that is starting to turn around and kind of lean towards their favor a little bit. I'm telling you right now, I'm picking the Chiefs to win the whole thing because I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. They have the best quarterback in the NFL, an awesome defense, an awesome head coach. I think that they're going to three-peat. They're going to be the first team to ever do it. And when that happens, Andy Reid will have a legitimate case as the best head coach ever. And Patrick Mahomes will have a legitimate case as the best quarterback ever. And I'll probably make those cases if that happens, after they win the Super Bowl. And speaking of Super Bowls, Colts nowhere close to that. Chris Ballard is going to reiterate that tomorrow morning during his press conference. He's going to say, we're so close to the playoffs, and that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to be close to winning a Super Bowl. But hey, what do I know? Zach Hicks, he's set to join me coming up here in about 5 minutes, where we're going to talk about the Colts and Chris Ballard and Gus Bradley and all the changes that haven't made and all the changes that should have been made but weren't. Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts joins me here in about 5 minutes.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, 1430 AM in your car, the Indy Sports Ticket app. No matter how you're tuning in, it is greatly appreciated. It's Tuesday. It's 11 o'clock. It's still kind of football season, so Zach Hicks joins the show of Locked On Colts. Zach, what is going on, man?
Oh, loving life. Unfortunately, living in the timeline I kind of expected right now with the Colts' decisions in the last 24 hours, but it is what it is. I wish it was different, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think is how everyone kind of feels of like, this isn't really surprising. It's incredibly frustrating. Why do you think Jim Irsay decided to bring them back?
Well, again, we kind of talked about it last week where I think Jim's health does play a factor in this. I mean, we saw pictures of him going to the locker room after the game on Sunday. And look, he's never been the picture perfect version of health. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's really feeling it. You can tell from his latest health scare earlier in the year. And I think that kind of factors into this a little bit in terms of like, it's hard for him to kind of handle a big change right now, so part of it, you want to feel a little sympathy for that because that's probably a big reason here. But on the other hand, it's like, man, we have to go into a ninth year with Chris Ballard where things haven't really gotten that much better. They kind of just come out of being like a lower class team in 2017 all the way to where they are now, which is like lower middle class. So it's like, it took them 8 years to get to lower middle class. Maybe after like 20 years, they'll eventually get to Super Bowl contender or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe if things were different, like if Irsay was the Irsay of like 2 or 3 years ago in terms of his health and how fiery he was with some things, I think maybe he would have been impulsive and made a change and done the Jim Irsay thing. But with where it stands right now, I don't know if the Colts are kind of ready for that in terms of his health and just him going through all that stuff. And also, again, at the end of the day, he's loyal to his guys. He's always loyal to his guys. He's been like this his whole career, or his whole time as an owner. Guys always get extra long on their tenures compared to other organizations. So even if he was healthy, this might have been the same result here. So I don't know. I don't know what he needs to see going into a 9th year of Chris Ballard, but we're gonna get it.
Yes, we are, and we're gonna like it. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks too. Do you think Chris Ballard changes anything?
Not really. No, I mean, there was a quote that he said, and shout out to the Indy beat guys. I know they get a bad rep for a lot of things, but they've been really pushing Ballard and Steichen on a lot of things the past year and a half now. And I want to say it was James Boyd of The Athletic asked him in late August last year, like, with this being your 8th year, like, do you see yourself having to like maybe change things up because things haven't been working? And to paraphrase here, like, I'm not going to say the whole quote, but Ballard essentially said, like, I operate the way that I believe in. I firmly believe in this kind of strategy. And if it gets me fired, so be it. And again, I've said this many times on your show, even I'm a big proponent of when teams show you who they are, that's who they are. When people tell you who they are, that's who they are. I mean, he's consistently told us this is who he is. He's someone who believes in his process, believes in the way that he does things, and he'll go down with that ship. He won't drastically change just because he's on the hot seat. He'll just keep riding out his own method until it works or sinks, and that's kind of just who he is as a person. I don't think his method is particularly bad either. Like, the draft and develop approach is the correct way to approach being a general manager. Like, you cannot have success as a general manager if you're not part of that type of approach. I mean, even the best teams in football, a lot of their best players are homegrown players. But the two things that hurt Chris Ballard are, one, he doesn't bring in really any competition in free agency, where you see teams like the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, they still bring in outside free agents to push their young players and to push their drafted talent to get to where they need to be, or they get replaced by these veteran free agents. Like, they still need to have that camp competition where the Colts kind of hand a lot of starting jobs to people. And then the other thing is Ballard has just simply missed on a lot of his draft picks recently. I mean, I guess it's still kind of too early to say with some of these guys, but it's not looking good for players like Jelani Woods, Anthony Richardson, A.D. Mitchell. I mean, Leatu Latu had a kind of a disappointing season. Juju Brents, we don't know if he's ever going to be a thing for the Colts. Even go back to 2021 with Kwity Paye and Dio Dangbo, they haven't really panned out the way that you need them to be when you spend those picks on them. So overall, like, I think Ballard's approach is right. And when it was clicking early in his tenure, like, and he was hitting on those draft picks, it was showing that, like, yes, this type of process can work here. But when you're missing on your draft picks and then you're not really doing anything to supplement your roster on top of missing draft picks, you get a roster that stagnates and in a lot of ways kind of goes downhill a little bit. So I think he does need to change a little bit. I don't think he needs to change too much, but they need some kind of change, but I just don't expect it from him because he's constantly told us that's not really who he is.
Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked on Colts, talking Chris Ballard and the Colts and everything that is going on. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't expect for like his draft philosophy to change. Like, I know that, you know, we're all going to be begging for Tyler Warren or some other tight end with that 14th pick, but we're probably going to get an offensive tackle or something like that. But
yeah,
but I really hope, because like the idea of like building from the inside out and all that kind of stuff is like, I think that's a correct approach, because when you look at like the Lions and the Eagles and some of the better teams in the NFL, like in the trenches, they're really good. But yep. I do wish, because I think you made an excellent point, like free agency is really the thing that I want to see change, because you brought up how like there's just kind of a lack of competition. And I believe that DeForest Buckner said something similar earlier in the week. And it's just like competition makes you better. And like, if you don't have that, then you get kind of complacent and you don't improve. So that is really where I want to see the change.
Yeah. And I actually made this point on Locked On Colts yesterday because we were talking about Buckner's comments, but who were the two players in training camp that were not guaranteed a starting role out the gate? It was Nick Cross and Alec Pierce. Nick Cross, they manufactured a competition with Ronnie Harrison and Rodney Thomas because Gus Bradley didn't feel comfortable with any of those guys. So they had to have that competition there. And then Pierce was obviously being pushed by A.D. Mitchell, who was just drafted pretty high. So outside of those guys, everyone else had their spot guaranteed. Now, which two players just made the biggest jump for the Colts this past season? Alec Pierce and Nick Cross. I think there's a real correlation there. And Buckner mentioned it in his comments. He talked about Pierce specifically. He even called him out by name, saying that was a guy where they brought in direct competition for him this offseason, and it led to his best career season. And now Alec Pierce goes from a guy where, you know, I don't think any of us were really thinking he was a bust, but we were thinking like, oh man, this is another like Kwity Paye or Dio Dangbo type pick where it's like, it's just going to be very underwhelming for where the Colts took him, to now it's looking like this is one of your core building blocks going forward. Like Pierce was like 3 more accurate balls away from a 1,000-yard season on like 40 catches. Like this is one of the best deep threats in football this year. And I'm not saying it was only because A.D. Mitchell came in. Pierce deserves credit too for the work he did, but that competition led to that extra work and to that extra mile that Pierce had to take. So, you know, I'm not saying that you need to bring in, you know, a mid-level defensive tackle and say, all right, DeForest Buckner, you're competing with this guy. But, you know, like you have your star players who are kind of guaranteed their spot, but like Isaiah Franklin and E.J. Speed, Jalen Jones, Sam Womack, Julian Blackman, Kwity Paye, Dio Dangbo. On offense, you know, half the offensive linemen, anybody at tight end. Gosh, I mean, the backup running backs, you know, even the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Like, these are all guys that need competition because there's no way that they should have guaranteed spots as starters. They have to earn that. And if they win the competition in camp, which I do expect a lot of them to because they are good players, then so be it. Then they're the better players. But pushing them can only make them better. And if it doesn't make them better, then they probably weren't the right guy for you anyway. So I think DeForest Buckner was right on point with those comments. Like, the few guys that have been pushed in camp over the years have grown from it and been much better, or if they haven't, like, let's go back to Nick Cross in 2022. He wasn't ready to start. Rodney McLeod came in and gave the Colts a really good safety season. So you at least have adequate players that can actually play football for your team, rather than Julian Blackmon has to play the whole season with a torn labrum because you don't have any safety behind him that can play football. So yeah, I do think Ballard needs to be a little more aggressive in free agency. And I'm not saying go get a Daniil Hunter type. I'm not saying go sign some superstar free agents, but I mean, you look at what like the Bills do in free agency, where it's like they bring in guys like Taylor Rapp, they bring in Curtis Samuel at wide receiver, they bring in guys like more guys in the trenches all the time, defensive tackle and stuff like that. They bring in those types of players, and like a Curtis Samuel didn't work out for them this year, but who knows if that competition pushed Khalil Shakir to be this really good receiver for them, so all your free agent signings don't need to work as long as they serve a purpose of making your team better. So I just think they need to bring in like it doesn't need to be like a ton of great players, but it can be like 6 to 7 to 8, just quality like backups to sub starters that can push the guys on the roster and just make your team better. I think that is a core thing that the Colts need to do this offseason. And I just don't know if they're going to do it because it's just not Ballard's method, really.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And joined by Zach Hicks of Locked on Colts. What adjustments do you want to see Shane Steichen make? Because obviously we're all going to pile on Ballard. I didn't think Shane Steichen was great this year. I don't think he was as bad as what everyone else thinks either, though. But at the same time, like, he needs to improve as a head coach. Are there any adjustments that you'd like to see him make?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple adjustments. I do think he's a little bit too stubborn in his pass early, run late philosophy, in terms of like we open the game with a strong passing attack and then we close with a good running attack once we have the lead. Well, look, your team has a 260-pound quarterback who runs a 4.4 and a running back who just ran for 1,400 yards and previously had 2,000 total yards a couple of years ago. Like, your identity is a running football team. So I do think in a lot of games, like, the Colts would have been better served starting out the game with a really run-heavy approach and then maybe letting that lead to more passes. This is in Philly. You can't kind of go the exact same route that he went with Philly or even with the Chargers with Justin Herbert. So I do think that philosophy could change a little bit. He was a little stubborn with it. Some of the in-game decision-making in terms of like settling for long field goals and stuff. And I know some of that comes into play with your quarterback. You don't really fully trust your quarterbacks. But again, he was part of picking the quarterbacks, so you got to at least show some trust in them. And also in like, situational football in terms of like late in the first half, like, trying to go for points or not go for points. Some of those decisions were a little bit weird, but overall, I think the other thing though is just, this is kind of a hard thing to quantify, and it's a hard thing for us fans to really have like insight on, but there's just been a lot of quit in his team with the Colts the last 2 years. And I don't mean like, like active, like guys fighting with media or anything like, some crazy dysfunction or anything like that. But there's just been a lot of games with this group of Colts these last 2 years where they're getting like beat down by teams they should not be beat down by. And part of that's just the overall culture too, from Chris Ballard down and the players that have been here since 2021, 2022. But games like the Giants game this year, the Bengals game last year, the Falcons game last year, just way too many showings like that. Like, you want to see this team, like, even in their losses, even if it's to like a poor team, like, have it be a competitive showing. Like, there's just too many games where they're losing by like 2 scores to like bad football teams, or even like 3 scores to good football teams. Like, let's try to, get these guys ready to play on Sundays and avoid these couple duds. Like, it's fine to lose football games. No one wants you to be perfect, but you got to inspire these guys to be a little bit more proud out there. And like, you can't be getting blown out by bad football teams. So I don't know how you really quantify that or how you say like Steichen be better at not getting blown out, but like, just in terms of getting this to be a more competitive, like fighting football team, like grinded out football team, I think are some ways that he can get that out of this group. But overall, offensively, I think there are some things they could change too. I think he's still pretty good as an offensive play caller. They just need to be, they need better at tight end. They need better quarterback play next year. And I think their offense will be fine. But I'm not opposed to Steichen being back, because I do think there are some good things, even though it was a bad season. He definitely needs to get better with PR. Like that's the biggest thing. Yeah, I can't believe I overstepped that. Like the PR stuff, I know he wants to be really short with the media and not be super thorough with things, but you got to at least give us a little bit of something just so you're not killing your players out there or killing yourself here.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some growth things to take. Luckily, he's still a really young, fairly new-ish head coach. So, he gets a little bit of grace with that, but we'll see. We'll see if he can take those steps. I have more confidence in him than I do in Chris Ballard, at least.
I completely agree with that. Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. Yeah, like if your quarterback has a disc issue, maybe say that and not his back is sore.
Yeah. Yes.
I do think that firing Gus Bradley is a step in the right direction. It's not everything that Colts fans wanted, but I do think that this is a good thing. Like if I had my pick, like every other team in the NFL that's going to be looking for a new DC, Robert Saleh is the guy I want. Probably won't happen because it's the Colts, and it's just not going to happen because that's who they are. So my thing is, when I look at this Colts defense, I don't think that there's just like a ton of talent. Like I think there's some solid players in there, but there aren't enough studs to be like, we're going to play cover 3 all game. And because we're so talented, we're going to be fine. I think that this Colts defense is structured a little bit more like the Vikings defense, where there's some good players, maybe 1 or 2 great ones. But the reason why that Vikings defense is so awesome is because they're multiple. They switch up coverages. They'll blitz 6. They'll bring 8 up to the line and then drop 3 of them. And they're just very weird and kind of innovative. And I think that's kind of what I want in whoever the Colts' next defensive coordinator is. Someone who is multiple and is willing to kind of switch up coverages and things. What are you looking for in the Colts' next DC?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we all want. I mean, you can really probably poll every single Colts fan that and it's probably what they want. They want just some kind of innovation at defensive coordinator. Like I think everyone would be fine with it being a first-time defensive coordinator just to get that innovation, because for like, I don't think Matt Eberflus or Gus Bradley were bad defensive coordinators by any means, but they were a little bit generic in terms of what they asked their defenses to do, and then just come up and be fundamental in your process after allowing the catch underneath. I think people in Indy finally want something where it's like, look, if we give up some explosives, that's fine, but let's make quarterbacks actually have to work pre-snap and post-snap and actually have to like make hard decisions on where to throw the football to, instead of with this one where the only decision the quarterbacks really had to make was, do I want to be a little bit more aggressive here, or should I just throw it to the flat and get like a 5-yard gain? Like that's kind of where Colts fans, I think, are with this. So we'll see what the Colts ultimately do. One thing I did point out, though, is Chris Ballard in particular very, very much loves the Tampa 2 to Seattle cover 3 type of coaching tree. That's kind of where he grew up in as a scout and as an NFL executive. He was around Lovie Smith and the Chicago Bears when they were dominating the NFL with that Tampa 2 type system. And he's just forever been a big fan of that. So if he's truly leading this defensive coordinator search, we'll probably know because they'll pick somebody from that type of tree, which, I mean, Robert Saleh is from that type of tree. I'm not saying that the Colts can't get him because he's going to be very sought after by people, but Saleh is essentially going to run the same defense as Gus Bradley, but just it's going to be executed a lot better, and just more of a no nonsense guy in Saleh. So that can work, and that would be very Chris Ballard if they went that route. But I'll be curious to see if they do try to mix it up. I do think one name to watch would be Jim Leonhard from the Denver Broncos, former Wisconsin Badgers defensive coordinator. He's the Broncos pass game specialist and super innovative, super just unique defensive coach. And the tie with Ballard is that Wisconsin tie, obviously. Ballard, if you say Wisconsin anything, Ballard immediately loves you. You're like his favorite thing in the whole world. He's everything Wisconsin Badger. This is alma mater right there. So I do believe that he has some admiration for Leonhard because of that Wisconsin tie. But Leonhard is so different from what Ballard typically does, and basically the way that he drafted this defense to be, that it'll be interesting to see if he goes that route. So we'll see. Like I do think like a Robert Saleh or the interim coach in New York after Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich, like they make sense in terms of keeping the same scheme as Gus Bradley, but just a different face leading it. And that seems like the typical Colts hire. But we'll see if they are really set on changing something and they go after a Jim Leonard, or they go after someone from like the Chargers defensive staff, or someone from the Vikings defensive staff, or the Lions defensive staff. Like, those staffs are running very unique systems, a lot of man coverage, a lot of blitz heavy stuff. And we'll see if they decide to go that route. I would expect more of the safe route, because it's the Colts here, but I'll give them a shot, I guess. Why not? What else do I have to do this offseason?
Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. So you brought up Ballard, and which is perfect because I've put together a bingo card. We're going to call it Ballard Bingo, of all of the things that I expect for him to say tomorrow morning during his end of the year press conference. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't take you through the whole card because there's 24 different things on here. But obviously, like, we're so close, has to be on there.
Yep.
Let me think here. I hated letting Gus Bradley go. That's got to be on there. I'm disappointed. That's going to be in there. We like our guys.
Of course.
Awkward laugh. Because he's going to say something and just be like, and then just do this. I don't want to call his laugh weird, but you know what I'm talking about. You've heard him talk enough.
It'll be a quick, sarcastic quip to one of the questions, and then he'll laugh, and then he'll answer it for real. Is what it will be. That's typically what he does.
That's exactly right. I think we're going to get a cliche statement about belief. Because, before the year started, he did the whole either you stand for something or you stand for or nothing. This is what we believe. If I get fired, so be it. I think we're going to get something like that. We're going to get a bold-faced lie where he's like, Ryan Kelly's a great guy. Hopefully we can get him back. And then they don't bring him back. We're going to get I don't blame you for being upset. And then I also think
you got to add after that. Hell, I fired myself 10 times already the last week or something like that.
I've got that separate. That separate because I do think he's going to say that. I think we're going to get a lot of. I do think he's going to be asked about Pat McAfee and just everything he said. And I think we're going to get some sort of. I like Pat McAfee. I like all of our former players, and they're entitled to their opinions, and that's going to kind of be it. I
love the passion or something like that is what it would be.
That is exactly right. I think we're going to get a lot of comments on young players. Like, we're going to get Leatu Latu didn't have the production that we wanted, but we liked what we saw on tape. A.D. Mitchell struggled, but he's a good kid. We feel like Anthony Richardson got better. I think we're going to get all three of those. There's a couple on my bingo card that I don't like, and if you have a proposal to replace them, I would like to hear them. I think he's going to mention not cutting his hair until he wins a Super Bowl, which I don't love that one because it's a reflection on the season. And then I think he's
gonna look like those things from Where the Wild Things Are by the end of the season.
That's exactly right. I mean, he's just I think that he likes to make things about himself. That's why I have that one on there. And then the other one that I don't like is Joe Flacco was a great mentor for Anthony, even though when you watch the games, if they cut to Anthony on the sideline, he was always with Sam Ehlinger and not Joe Flacco.
Right.
So those are the two that I don't love. Do you have any suggestions to replace those?
Oh, man. Well, I think we have to have an over-under on the word look. I think that's
good.
That's the go-to with Chris Ballard is he has to start everything with look, man. Like, look. It's hard to win in this league. Look, we're close. So I think you have to have an over-under of like 12 on the word look, I think would be a good one.
Okay.
Going to Anthony, he'll say something like, this is a talented kid with a good head on his shoulders, and we believe in this young man. Sometimes it doesn't work out from day one, but this is a process, and we believe in the process now. We got this thing going right. And he just needed a little bit of that wake-up call. And, he was playing some good football down the stretch there. Yeah, it sucks that he had the back injury, but he was playing some good football for us, and we're optimistic heading into next year. You know, like something, I don't know, just something about like he's a talented kid, you know, something like that. I guarantee he'll basically say what I just said verbatim about Anthony Richardson.
This is a process is perfect. You know, he's going to say
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. And then the one thing I really do think, like, because we get Sassy Ballard at the end of the season, and he likes to take some of his wins. Like, he likes to point out some of his wins to the media, because the media is always like attacking him essentially in these. So he'll certainly say something about how everyone was questioning him about corner last offseason, and corner ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, like, it did.
The rest of your defense, or like people were saying bring in a safety, but Nick Cross had a career year or something. You know, like he'll shout out Nick Cross and Jalen Jones for being like very good, and then like Samuel Womack or whatever for being like really good, and like that's why they weren't worried about corner or safety, because those guys all had good seasons. Like, come on, man. But you know that he's gonna point out like those wins there, because that's what people were criticizing him about.
I have something similar. I think he's gonna point out Jonathan Taylor being really good, and that's why he paid him.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really good though. I'm so excited. Like, I'm not excited for what he's gonna say. I just think I have a legitimate chance of filling up my entire card. Like,
yeah. No, it's funny. I tweeted out like fake quotes or whatever, like just anticipating what he's going to say. And my buddy texted me, because in there I said something like, you hate to lose Gus, you know, that I didn't do my part and give him enough. And, you know, I take full responsibility for Gus not being here. We just need to make a change. And I tweeted that out, and my buddy texted me being like, wait, is Chris Ballard talking? Did they fire Gus Bradley? And I didn't realize what he was talking about. So I was like looking, I was like, it doesn't look like it. He texted me 10 minutes later, and he's like, I thought that was him actually talking. Like,
that's hilarious. That's awesome.
We've been doing this for so long. Like, we know what he's going to say. I mean, honestly, like, I kind of feel bad for the beat guys, because like, what can you really get out of him at this point? We're going into year 9. Like, what can you really ask him or say to him that hasn't been said or done before? And you're going to get the same like song and dance from him. Yep. Like, and credit to the beat guys. I think they're going to really push him tomorrow. I do think they get unfairly hated on by the fan base. Like I in particular, like I think like James Boyd and Nate Atkins have been going after Ballard and Steichen very, very much these last couple months, and they've been doing a great job with it. And I fully anticipate it to be a kind of heated press conference in a lot of ways tomorrow, because these guys have not been sitting back and quiet. So credit to these guys, but I just don't know what you can get out of the guy at this point, because we've kind of heard it all and seen it all with him at this point.
It's like you said, it's going to be a lot of the same. And there's a part of me that wants to be frustrated by it. But at the same time, I feel like everyone in Boston knew what Belichick was going to say, because he had just been there so long. And I'm sure the people in Los Angeles know what Sean McVay is going to say and so on. So it's one of those things that comes with having someone around for forever. The only difference is those guys won way more than Chris Ballard has.
Well, that's the thing. You like, what's that joke from Step Brothers or whatever, where with like the Seth Rogen interview thing, where it's like the suits were funny at first, but now it seems kind of sick or whatever. And you think, like, when you're winning, it's like a cutesy, like a little fun thing or whatever. It's like, oh, cool. Like, these little things that he says are just funny. Like, that's our guy, though. When you're losing, it's like, oh my God, he's saying these things again. I hate this. It's kind of sick now, you know. It's not even funny. It's sick. That's kind of what it is, you know. Like, you get tired of it.
Last thing, and I'll let you go. Who do you think the Jags are going to hire to be their new head coach?
Oh man, I don't know, because keeping Balky is such a
like a Colts move.
Weird. Yeah, it's very Colts. Very cool. At least with Ballard, like, he's built decent teams, decent to below average teams. Balky is building terrible teams with Jacksonville. And they just keep getting like top 5 picks. Like, gosh, terrible. I don't know though. Weirdly, I do think they have an outside chance at Ben Johnson, because the rumors with him are that he wants a small market with a good young quarterback. So like Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and New England. Like, I don't think Cincinnati's going to open, but like before the season, people were saying Cincinnati. So like New England or Jacksonville could make sense for him because of May and Lawrence. So I do think they have an outside chance there, but because you have Balky, like, why would he want to step into that situation? Outside of that, like, they might go rah-rah guy or something like that just because they've gone offensive coach the last two times, and it blew up in their face. So maybe they go, like, they wouldn't be able to get it Vrabel.
I've
I
got a
don't know. Who's
list
kind of a
of the guys who they're going to interview if you want it.
Yeah, give me the list of guys they're interviewing.
Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn,
Huh?
Patrick Graham, and Robert Saleh.
Well, there are actually a lot of offensive guys on there.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
they just paid Trevor Lawrence. You got to have someone who can come in and make it work.
Yeah. I don't know. The one that makes sense for that, I mean, a Saleh retread would be funny. That would kind of that would kind of just fit what they like to do. And didn't Saleh overlap with Balky and San Fran, I think, for a little bit too?
I think so.
He might have been a little after. I don't know. Around the same time. So maybe you could see something like that, but I don't know. I mean, maybe a Kellen Moore would be funny.
That'd actually be kind of fun.
Because I mean, Kellen Moore is. I like Kellen Moore as a person and all, but like, I don't think he's ready to be a head coach. So maybe a Kellen Moore. I don't know.
We'll see.
It's a weird spot. I don't know what this division's doing right now, man. This division's a mess.
Titans fired their general manager today.
I know. The Texans are regressing. Like, Stroud doesn't look as good as we did. Their offensive line's falling apart. The Colts are keeping Ballard for year 500. The Titans fired their GM, but they're going to keep their head coach. The Jaguars keeping their GM, but firing their head coach. Like, this division is a mess. This is an absolute mess. And the Texans are going to keep winning it at like 9 wins the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, maybe something, maybe someone, I don't know. You're exactly right. I am way over on time, Zach. I got to run. Thanks for your time, man, as always.
All right. You're going, bud.
Thanks. That is Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. You can check him out on Twitter at ZachHicks2. We'll be back here in a couple minutes to continue talking Colts. Gus Bradley fired, and what to kind of expect next season.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice day. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in. The Colts, just in a bad spot, set up to be the Pacers of 3 years ago. That's where they're at right now. That's what they're going to be this following season. When I moved here, the Indiana Pacers were not very good. It's the 2021 to 2022 season. They were just bad. They went 25-57. That was the year where things started to look up, though. They make the trade for Tyrese Halliburton. They moved Domantas Sabonis out, and things have been dandy ever since. And I remember I went to several games that year because I was new in town, single, didn't have any friends. And there's been nights where I was like, what am I going to do tonight? I'm like, I'm 15 minutes from Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I'm going to go watch a game. And I would always have a blast. And, it was great. And I had a blast going to games that year, not because of the Pacers, but because of who I saw them play. I got to see Steph Curry tie Reggie Miller's three-point record. Or I guess Ray Allen's three-point record. Nah, that's who had it at the time. I saw one of the few games where James Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant actually played together. Kevin Durant went for 40 in that game. Almost saw two fans fight. It would have been fantastic. Okay, I had a blast going to those Pacers games because Pacers games are always a blast to go to. But also because the opponents that they played were good. I wasn't going to watch the Pacers. I was going to watch Steph Curry. I was going to watch Kevin Durant and Kyrie and all those guys. And that is where the Colts are going to be this next season. Okay? People are going to go to games at Lucas Oil Stadium, not because they care about the Colts, but because they want to see whoever they're playing against. Okay? They have their 3 division opponents at home. Then they get the Dolphins, Cardinals, Falcons, Raiders, and 49ers. Look, I'd pay to watch the Dolphins play because I'm a fan. The average Colts fan probably wouldn't. But every other game on the schedule, there is reason to go watch the Colts play. The Titans have the number 1 overall pick. I would love to watch Travis Hunter or Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward or whoever they wind up taking with that number 1 pick. I would love to watch them play here at Lucas Oil, especially if it's Travis Hunter. I'd pay to watch Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. when the Cardinals come in town. I'd pay to watch Michael Penix Jr. when the Falcons come to Lucas Oil. And guess what? There's probably a ton of Indiana fans who would do the exact same thing. The Raiders, they're probably going to draft Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward. Would love to watch those guys play. Okay? And then, I think everyone would want to watch the 49ers because they just have a ton of good players. And I think that is how people are going to approach going to Colts games this next season, because this is the lowest the Colts franchise has been in quite some time. There's no hope. There's, no sight of change coming anywhere except at the defensive coordinator spot, a change that needed to be made, 2 years ago when they hired Shane Steichen. Okay? And I just think that people are so incredibly disappointed by what we've seen from the Colts that the approach this next year is going to be, look, we aren't very good, but the teams we're playing are, so let's go watch those teams play. Right? Let's go hang out with our buddies at the game. Maybe a miracle will happen and we'll win. Okay, now, if the Colts start 5-0 and Anthony Richardson looks like a stud, then that'll obviously change rather quickly. But I can tell you right now, I'm not going to a game unless the other team is good. That's where I am with the Colts, and I think a lot of people have that exact same feeling. Now, the one thing that the Colts do have working in their favor is the rest of the AFC South is just an absolute dumpster fire. The Jacksonville Jaguars probably aren't going to be very good again next year. The Texans could regress more. I don't know if they'll regress more or not, but they aren't great. The Titans just fired their general manager again. They're on their 4th head coach GM combo in the last 4 years. It's a really bad division. And because of that, and because this Colts roster is pretty average, they're going to have a chance to win their division once again, just because of the dysfunction across the division as a whole. So that will help in terms of attendance and people wanting to go to games and do all those things. But I don't think that Colts fans are going to continue to fall for this awful product, or awful is probably a bit harsh, but this lacking product that could be a lot better than what it is if the Colts just had an owner who was willing to pull the plug at the appropriate time, and they currently do not have that. So we're, set up for another year of mediocrity. Buy your tickets now and sell them to, fans of opposing teams when they come into town. When we come back here in a few minutes, Chris Ballard has his big press conference tomorrow morning. So we're going to do a little bit of Ballard Bingo, and then we're going to talk about the Gus Bradley being fired as well. All that coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Hey, have you noticed all the new landscaping downtown?
That new landscaping does more than just add beauty to our community.
Really?
It's a rain garden, part of the community's green stormwater infrastructure plan. It uses natural vegetation to absorb rainwater, reduce flooding, and manage the effects of storms. It's one of the ways our community is managing the connection between how we use our land and manage our water resources, providing multiple benefits for all.
Learn more about how planners are working to help communities at planning.org. Brought to you by the American Planning Association.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Gonna wrap up the show today, getting ready for the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. Seth Greenberg at 12:30, Ryan Burr at 2. Going to close out today's show with a little bit of Chris Ballard Bingo. He is set to do his end of the year press conference tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And look, this is year 9. We know what he's going to say. And I made some minor adjustments after talking to Zach Hicks. And yeah, I mean, here it is. Here's my bingo card for all of the things that Chris Ballard is going to say during his press conference tomorrow. I think I'm going to get bingo at least twice. Seriously. I mean, I may fill up my whole card, honestly. So we got to start it off in the top left corner with "we're so close." He's going to say that. It's going to happen. There's not a doubt about it in my mind. He's going to make some comments about how he's fired himself multiple times. And then later on, he's going to be like, even though I fired myself multiple times, I know I'm the guy for this job. We're going to get that's going to come towards the end. He's going to make a comment about how he's still going to rebuild through the draft, even though that hasn't really worked. We're going to get some sort of comment about how free agency is overrated and how that doesn't solve all of your problems, which is true, but it can solve a lot of them. The Vikings added more free agents this year than any other team in the NFL, and they went 14-3. We're going to hear him say something about how he hated letting Gus Bradley go. He's going to say that that's on him. That's going to happen. He's going to make a comment about how he's disappointed. We know for a fact that he's going to say something about how, quote, we like our guys. We're going to hear him say that Shane Steichen's undoubtedly the right coach for the job. We're going to hear him do this awkward laugh, and I think Zach Hicks got it exactly right. He'll make this sarcastic quote, awkwardly laugh, and then answer the real question. He's going to make a comment about how Zaire Franklin's a real leader and an important voice in that locker room, which is not a good thing. He's going to get asked about the Pat McAfee stuff, and I think he's going to say, I like Pat McAfee. I like his passion. But, and then he'll explain why Pat McAfee's wrong. Okay. He's going to make a quote about how he needs to be better. It'll probably be tied in with the Gus Bradley thing. Like I hated letting Gus Bradley go, but I didn't do a good enough job getting him good players. I need to be better at that. His firing's on me. He's going to talk about how this is a process, a 10-year process, according to Dan Dockich, which becomes more and more true every single day. We're going to get some sort of cliche statement about belief. He had that quote earlier in the year. He did this whole, either you stand for something or you stand for nothing. This is what I believe in. If it gets me fired, so be it. And bro, it's going to get you fired. You need to change things up just a little bit. We're going to get some quote on how, he likes what he saw from Leatu Latu. The production wasn't what we wanted, but we like what we saw from Latu on tape. We think he's going to come back and be even better in year 2. We're going to get some sort of quote like that. He's going to get asked about AD Mitchell and the struggles that he had. And, we're going to get a nice little, AD struggled a little bit, but he's a good kid. AD Mitchell's a good kid. We're going to get something about Anthony Richardson, how he got better and how they know he's the right guy for the job. The kid's super talented. We felt like he got better, was playing good football down the stretch. It's a shame that he hurt his back, the same back that's been messed up since he was 14 years old. Okay, so you say something about that. He's going to drop some horseshoe guy reference, Someone's going to ask him about DeForest Buckner's comments and things said to The Athletic, and he's like, Defoe is a horseshoe guy. We're going to get that. We ended up setting an over at 11.5 on how many times he says look, because that's how he starts every question that he gets asked. Next, we're going to get a quote on Ryan Kelly. He's just going to tell a bold-faced lie where he says something along the lines of Ryan Kelly's a great guy. Hopefully we can get him back for here next year. He's a really important piece for us and all that kind of stuff. Even though that's a lie, because if they wanted Ryan Kelly back, they would have already extended him. And they should have extended Ryan Kelly because it's important to have adults in the room. Okay, 3 more, and then I'll move on to my Gus Bradley thoughts. We're going to get some sort of quote on how Michael Pittman Jr. is a really tough guy. He's going to brag, Chris Ballard will, about paying Jonathan Taylor because Jonathan Taylor had a really good season this year. And then, he's going to say something about how he doesn't blame other people. He doesn't blame fans for being upset. It's year 9. We know exactly what Ballard's going to say. And I really feel like I have a pretty decent chance here at filling out this bingo card entirely. Moving on to Gus Bradley, who will be mentioned in that press conference tomorrow. It's not surprising. I know that we were all expecting this because the defense has just been bad as long as he's been here. And it was another bad year for the defense, 29th in yards allowed, 26th in points allowed, 19th in red zone defense, 31st in third down defense. Just bad. Like he needed to go. And I know that Colts fans wanted many more changes than just Gus Bradley. But I mean, at least this is a step in the right direction. If you want like super duper glass half full stuff, at least this is, like I said, a baby step in the proper direction. They need to bring in someone new. I would love it if it was Robert Saleh. Probably won't be Robert Saleh though. I really just want someone who's going to be multiple on defense. I want some sort of innovator because like this Colts defense, as we saw under Gus Bradley, just isn't talented enough to be like, we're going to run cover 3 all day and we're going to be fine. Like you have to be uber talented to be able to do that. That's what the Legion of Boom did, but they were the Legion of Boom. They had a bunch of really good players on that defense. And so they were able to run a basic defense, but because they were so talented, it was tough to beat them. And the Colts just don't have that level of talent on defense. I think this Colts defense is much more similar to the Vikings, where it's a lot of like decent players, but because the scheme and how multiple the Vikings are, blitzing 3 and dropping 8 and then bringing, 8 guys up to the line of scrimmage and dropping, 5 of them or dropping 2 of them or whatever, like that just allows them to be much more disruptive on the defensive side of the ball. That is what the Colts need. They need someone like Brian Flores that is highly innovative and isn't just going to like run cover 3 for, 3 hours and hope and pray that it works. Because that it doesn't work. Like this is what we've seen for the last 3 years. So Colts fans, I'm sorry. I just I'm not looking forward to the Colts season next year. Who would have thought that we'd be more excited about IU football at any point in our lives than we are for the Indianapolis Colts? It's brutal out here, man. Absolutely brutal. And, it's all going to come to a point tomorrow when we have to, sit back and listen to Gus Bradley BS us for however long he's on the podium. And I just, this is going to be absolutely brutal. It just is. I'm the only reason why I'm looking forward to that Ballard press conference tomorrow is because of this Ballard bingo card that I've put together. Like I've said multiple times, I really feel like I'm going to hit the mark on this. I think every single space will be filled. I think I'm going to get bingo at least 3 times. But we'll see. We'll see. This is going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you did, make sure you head over to YouTube, subscribe to the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube channel, so that way you can hop in the chat there and be part of the conversation. Follow me on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith. Follow the station at Ticket 1430 for all your updates on my show and the Dan Dockett Show, which comes your way here in about 5 minutes. Talk to you tomorrow.